Thousands of Minnesotans could lose their food stamp benefits under new work rules put in place by the Trump administration. The Minnesota Department of Human Services estimates 8,000 Minnesotans will lose benefits from the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, or SNAP. The rule change takes effect in April. As reporter Sonia Goins explains, that change and two other proposals will affect some people more than others.
A new rule finalized by the U.S. Department of Agriculture in December tightens work requirements for SNAP recipients who are able-bodied adults without dependents.
There's reasons why they aren't necessarily able to find work, or perhaps they have medical issues, or they have other issues going on in their life.
To qualify for SNAP benefits, caseworkers look at how much money a person makes to determine eligibility. They then deduct the amount of money people spend on utility payments. But under a proposed rule, Minnesotans will have the same utility deductions as everyone else across the country.
That's just not fair, because we know that Minnesotans spend more on fuel costs than other states.
Lisa Bailey says there's also a proposal to eliminate broad-based eligibility requirements.
It will expressly exclude some people from receiving any benefits, and then it will reduce the amount of money that other people receive.
She says the overall cuts will have a devastating effect on Minnesota families.
This is a direct hit to people's pockets, and that money is used exclusively for food.
Local food shelves who help people make ends meet will feel the pinch.
Very worried. This is a critical and important component of our safety net as a community, and has been for decades.
About 400 families a week use a SEEP food shelf, with cuts looming on the federal food stamp program. Officials say that number will likely go up.
This is going to increase the need. There's no doubt. How much, we'll find out.
The Minnesota Department of Human Services wants to make sure people know the changes are coming so they can plan for it. Sonia Goins, CCX News.
The changes could have a ripple effect for people denied SNAP benefits. For instance, if a person is on SNAP, their children automatically qualify for the free or reduced lunch program. New data from the Minnesota Department of Health indicate that people living in poverty and more rental housing areas are less likely to protect themselves from radon. In the northwest suburbs alone, officials say 30% of homes have high radon levels. Radon is an invisible, odorless gas that can cause lung cancer. Health experts say 2 in 5 homes in Minnesota have high levels. They say the cost to mitigate it can be a significant barrier for some Minnesotans.
Yeah, I think the main issue there is the cost. Radon mitigation systems do cost about $1,500 to $2,500, and for a lot of people that's simply out of reach. So they have other priorities, and these people often don't test, and if they do test, they don't have the resources to fix their homes.
A radon test could cost between $5 and $30 depending on the type of kit. The department is working to determine how to address areas most in need. Local city clerks are getting ready for the presidential primaries. City halls like this one in Brooklyn Park are getting ready for Super Tuesday on March 3rd. Minnesota is one of 14 states holding presidential primaries that day. Minnesota used to hold party-run caucuses, but the state moved away from that with legislation in 2016.
The presidential primary, it hasn't happened since 1992, so this is kind of unique. Back in 2016, legislation passed a law that we're going to have a presidential nomination primary for each presidential election.
Voters can vote absentee from January 17th through March 2nd. You can also vote on the day of the presidential primary, March 3rd. Henry David Thoreau published Walden, a nonfiction account about his life in the woods in 1854. That book is still inspiring people today. Neil Persley introduces us to a Robbinsdale artist who added her vision to the story.
I went to school for interior architecture, so I have a big background in art.
Robbinsdale resident Heather Rennie is a multi-talented individual.
But my profession is not as an artist. That's very much a hobby for me.
Nevertheless, she has proven herself a gifted illustrator, completing a project combining her favorite book with a beloved passion.
I am a big advocate for the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center of Minnesota, so I used to volunteer there a lot. Also a big book lover. This has been my favorite book since I was 13. I discovered it. was looking for my next art project, and I decided to put 2 and 2 together to see if I could illustrate an edition when I found out that Walden was in the public domain. Found out anybody could publish any version of it if they wanted, and I thought that would be a really fun project.
Thoreau would approve.
And decided to do it as a project to raise money for the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center of Minnesota.
She began last April and wrapped it up in October.
And I would say I worked on it almost every day, but just for an hour or 2.
The book is available online and at events that Rennie does signings at. Heather believes the book's message is still relevant.
The fact that it's on kind of autonomy and self-sustenance, I think it really rings true right now too. Just people depending and relying on themselves more than other agencies to support them and to kind of get out there and experience your freedom.
I lived alone in the woods, a mile away from any neighbor, in a house I had built myself on the shore of Walden Pond.
Would you ever go Thoreau and just go live in the woods?
I think about it every day. I'd like to. I would like to someday.
In Robbinsdale, Neil Persley, CCX News.
Heather Rennie will be at the open house at the Wildlife Rehab Center of Minnesota on February 2nd, signing and selling copies to raise money for the center. We'll have more details on our website, ccxmedia.org.